Edits are done and I could actually be getting moving, but I can afford to be a little bit lazy at this point. This really was my favorite sort of campsite. You know, the kind where if a tree had fallen onto me and killed me in the middle of the night, it would have taken at least a good amount of time and effort to find my body. I guess part of me always sees people sharing campsites and, worrying about stuff like that, and it feels like people kind of huddling together for safety and comfort from the scary wilderness. So when I'm out on something like this, it makes me feel more like I'm actually out in the wilderness, enjoying the remote feelings. The route I took up to this ridge last night was way worse than this. I mean, if you look at it on the map, there were less contour intervals, so it was a shorter climb, but there was a lot of brush. At one point I had to go over some random piece of barbed wire that was strung up there, despite the fact no property line or anything that I could tell. Once I get down to that bridge down there, I'm going to be walking a dirt road for a couple of miles on the side and then following a river. I may get to the start of the big climb today, but that is very much just the last couple of miles. The trail goes up pretty steeply, a couple of 1,000 feet. And then once I reach the AT, I probably am going to aim for the knock with how much time I have left. But we'll see how today goes. And there we go. I just really enjoyed last night. In addition to the really cool campsite and, getting some northern light photos, the temperature went way up again. I actually had to delayer in the middle of the night. I went back to, hey, free underwear, using my sleeping bag as a quilt for the latter part of the night. This morning, I, barely needed my gloves, which is such a night and day change from what I was going through yesterday. Like I was saying yesterday, it kind of feels like that post-Silver City bit of the Continental Divide Trail. Basically, at the end of any of my long hikes, there has been a section that Jen and I refer to as kind of the victory lap, where the last logistical challenge is over. You've still got some hills, you've still got some hiking, stuff like that. Things can always happen at the last minute, one wrong step, but in general, the main effort, the main challenge is over. And it's just kind of, things start to feel very much quiet and like they're ending. I remember it really strongly approaching Hart's Pass on the PCT. Once I got past Tehican, that was the last big storm. The fires were finally behind me after I had been running like hell for, NorCal to northern Washington. Fires were popping up behind me left and right, and I was terrified I wasn't going to get my red line, purist footpath thing. On the ECT, it was basically the last couple Canadian provinces where, I made Key West to Canada. Now I just see what I can do and how far I can make it. Mississippi, it would have been probably after the Baton Rouge Fleet area where, again, it's quiet. After New Orleans, where it quieted down. So right now I'm enjoying the evenings. I'm still enjoying the walk-in, trying to finish up a couple of more books. But my mind does keep going to the challenges for the next couple adventures because, this one's pretty much wrapped up. Everything is booked. All I have to do is endure a fair amount of plane travel in the near future. Part of me is very much looking forward to seeing Jen again. And there are niceties of being back in civilization, like, non-instant coffee and going to our favorite Mongolian restaurant and a couple other things. But also, I'm just not mentally as happy when I'm off trail. Even now where I'm coming off trail, and, in a week I will be in Bonaire. Bonaire will be a ton of fun. Then I'm back in civilization for a couple of weeks to take care of things. Then we're out in Palau. Then I'm back in civilization again for 2-3 months, but I'll be doing the wilderness class. I'll be doing some other stuff. And then, big adventures start next year. But my time in town always seems like it stretches out to infinity. While I have good days, I have fun times. Jen and I really enjoy any of the time we can be together. There's just something about being out here that makes me inherently happier. And like I was saying last night, some of it has to do with the travel, the constant sense of progress and goals and accomplishment. And some of it is just enjoying the, nights in the tent. Usually at the start of the big hikes, the first one on the PCT, I was just terrified because I'm like, longest thing I've ever done was some dinky 200-mile thing. What the heck am I doing? There's like 2,600 miles ahead of me. But all the others, there's been this kind of sense of happiness because I'm on the move again, and just knowing how many nights I have, sleeping out under the stars before I have to deal with that whole civilization thing again. I don't really see us ever being able to decouple completely from, at least a partial existence back in civilization. The challenges with healthcare and whatnot are just insurmountable if one of us doesn't have a job with benefits. Hooray, America. And I mean, Jen does love her job, and even if we were magically independently wealthy, when we've been sitting there and like kicking things around, it's like, okay, how much would we have to be making from, like videos, etc., for both of us just to be able to go full time? And her comment was she would still want to find some way to teach because it is a passion of hers. Things like the Patreon and the, minimal amount of money we get from YouTube showing ads, it really does help us. I mean, that has given us a lot more flexibility to look at doing more big stuff rather than just having to say, okay, what is the minimum affordable thing that will get me out on trail? Oh, hey, I'm going to go do the PCT for the third time, Sadly, every time we are together and kind of like tossing things around, there doesn't really seem to be a better circumstance than what we have as far as being based out of Southern California, at least nominally. Jen being at her very supportive school district in a very good state for being a teacher. And yeah, it's just the reality is we're always going to have to spend part of the year apart. But, I had family members who had to do that for, paid jobs that they didn't really like. It was just, you need money, or you're doing it for the career or something like that. So if we have to be apart, there are worse reasons than big fun adventures we do. And I mean, we have been in this configuration since I quit my IT job Memorial Day 2019. PCT was 2020. And we have been doing stuff every year since. This summer was the most back to civilization one we've had, which was just due to the medical issues, which we have hopefully weathered. Right in the middle of all those medical issues, we basically cut off the last vestiges of our old life, getting rid of the last of some furniture and other items that we had in storage in anticipation of maybe having to move back into an apartment or something. And I mean, now the vehicles are gone. The Jeep was something I referred to as one of the last vestiges of my old life, because sure as heck I'm not buying something kind of that expensive and showy these days. I mean, I bought it for functional reasons. I had ripped the bottom off of an old RAV4 and I needed things to get to trailheads, but it was just an expensive vehicle that I probably should have replaced a number of years ago for cost reasons. I really like the color. The new RAV is great. I miss the green. Obviously, catastrophes can happen at any time. Can't really plan for those. They're going to happen whether I was sitting around in a cubicle hating life or whether we were out here trying to make as memorable a life as we can. So Jen and I talked about it the other day, and we are still solvent. All our buffers gone and a bunch of other stuff after this past year, but plan is to continue what we're doing. We have things in motion for next year. We have plans stretching out to 2029 at least. I have a Google Word doc called Massatators Adventures of Awesome that has all my notes for all those various other trails out there. So every time somebody messages me, generally it's something I've already heard of, and I start making notes because it's like, well, Allegheny, I remember looking at that. Why didn't I do that time? And so, I have notes about length, time of year, stuff like that. That was how I kind of quickly sorted through things and found these trails to do when I had a sudden opening in the schedule. There are so many that I want to do so badly. The biggest bummer is just that a lot of them are going to have to wait for however many years because we have other things to get done, which obviously good problem to have, but at the same time, I just so keenly feel the lack of time. Feels like, I'm going to run out of health, etc., long before I get to all the things that are currently on my list. And I'm always coming across new things where it's like, oh, that would be so cool to do. The Yukon wasn't on our radar before the Mississippi, and the Mississippi wasn't on our radar until I randomly came across a trip report while we were out on the Idaho border on the Continental Divide Trail. So all we can do is use what time we have as well as we can. That was a big part of kind of switching spring plans next year from hiking across Arizona, New Mexico to hopefully going to Western Australia, because I was really looking forward to the Mogollon Rim. I love that area. I love the other Brett Tucker trail I did, the Grand Enchantment. But, that felt like something that was achievable, similar to other things that I was doing. I mean, I almost did the Mogollon Rim connecting with the Grand Enchantment so I could basically walk back to Phoenix and fly out. Would have been fun, would have been cool to be out in the desert. There were some issues with it being a little too hot when I was starting, per Brett, which I appreciate the heads up rather than just letting me go face first into an issue. But obviously something like going out to Australia is going to be something that will push me a whole lot more. I do really appreciate when people ping me about new trails. They're not always new, but when they are, I do add them to my list. Basically, anything where I can camp or get like a private room affordably for sleeping is potentially something I will do. I wasn't interested in the Camino de Santiago because of that, but most other things, even if it's walking through towns or other, still have an appeal. I mean, we were looking hard at a couple of long trails out in Japan, for example, a while back. In fact, one of the kind of comforting reassurances that has come out of this particular trip is I'm not burned out by all the road walk issues from the ADT. Honestly, like walking between the foothill and this trail, I really enjoyed. I'm glad I did it. I got kind of a microcosm of what I normally get out of road walks, which is food along the way, friendly people, easy miles, occasionally almost getting run over, all the fun bits. I did originally put off things like the Sheltowee Trace and a few others that I looked at closely for this particular trip, just because I wasn't sure I was up to handling all the stealth camping, dog attack type issues on top of potentially having medical stuff, because I was taking it pretty hard every time the HSP flared back up and I was feeling awful and I was having to go on medication and all of that. So hence coming out to these trails where I had a really hard thing to start, but they were all straightforward and I could camp legally, etc., etc. And I mean, it's a good thing I'm not burned out on road walking, because I got to walk from Moab to San Francisco next year, which I would have done that anyway, even if I was just completely burned out on road walking, just because I don't like leaving things undone. I was so tempted to go back and try it this year. Like right now, I would hopefully be in San Francisco sort of thing, but discretion over valor. I have so many happy memories from the ADT and just love the whole doing something that not that many people do, that sort of thing. I describe it as really awesome to do, occasionally type 2 fun, Not the sort of thing I am going to repeat, but I absolutely love that kind of style of hike. And I kind of expected to. I mean, the ECT has kind of aspects of that. The ADT is a lot harder, obviously. The ECT, you got to go through the Keys and you got to go through Alabama, but Pinhoti and the AT are obviously very traditional trails. But still, that kind of forced me to grow beyond what I was on the BCT, which is, okay, I'm walking along a trail, I'm camping, and as long as I am not one of those people that keeps trying to set up a tent near a road or in town, I don't have to worry about anything while camping. So we'll see how things go. Other than just health stuff, I guess the biggest stressor as far as some of these plans is just economic. Because some of these things are a bigger strain. Obviously, it was cheaper to do the Mississippi than it will be to do the Yukon, things like that. But hey, it's not like everybody's worried and freaked out due to a combination of, like political chaos, technology bubble, things like that, which might all explode. Well, probably best oh crap, are they not leashed? Come on. I actually got told about this place, but they said all the dogs were kind of tied up and neglected, not roaming loose like that. I was just glad it wasn't pit bulls, because one of the worst areas of Alabama, there were pit bulls chained up in the front of this house. There was like 8 or 10 of them, and they were just slamming against the chain trying to get at me. I'm glad Jen isn't here, though. She would find this incredibly sad. So I was just looking at the map again. I am obviously pretty easily going to finish this. If I do my normal 15, I'll actually be at the Winding Stairs parking area, which is just 5 miles shy of VAT. VAT being a steep climb up from there, so probably aim to camp a little bit before that parking area. That means the next day I could pretty easily make it to the Knock. So maybe then I could camp on the far side of the Knock. I could actually make it all the way back to the Bald with the tower from the snowy day. Probably. That would be more climbing. I can also just go up to the AT and then head north. And I would basically just be going over little rolly hills and strolling back into Fontana. So either way, I could kind of close my loops pretty easily. I have just become somewhat less excited over time with the idea of hiking along the AT for a couple of days. The initial plan, I was going to have like 5+ days, and then I kind of spread out my recovery days and things like that, let my foot heal. Unfortunately, I have been down low. I haven't had cell reception since early yesterday. So I can't really coordinate with Byron and see if one of those is easier than the other. A big bunch of trucks come by me while I was checking my map. Guess there must be a fire crew or something stationed here. Talked to a guy back there, and he was actually from Utah. They said they were brought out kind of to help out in the severe fire danger weather. Unfortunately, he didn't indicate there was a water fountain up there. My filter's getting kind of shot at this point, so I was going to chug a bunch if there was an opportunity. Really mellow day, even if this section had more of these little blowdowns than anything else on this trail, I think. Unfortunately, while yesterday worked out pretty good in the evening, it is looking like tonight might be annoying. I am going to be dropping down to another river and road, and then I had kind of thought, okay, I'll go right past that. And it looks like there's some water sources and some camp options, which there is. But there's also train tracks over there, so I'm kind of like, There's a campsite after that, which would put me within just a couple of miles, very steep miles of finishing the Bartram. But that might take a bit of getting to. That is after the trail starts climbing steeply. And, it's already 2 o'clock here. I don't know that I can do 8 more miles without pushing past dark, which I'm not really inclined to do at the moment. The other option is I stop in a couple of miles before the descent down to the road, high enough up where hopefully I don't have too much noise, other than there's been some military overflights and things that have been a little on the loud side. And if I do that, I'll be close enough where I can absolutely finish this off and do at least a good chunk of the way to the knock the following day. And that's something to do with like backup water pressure. So apparently there are campsites here. I assume if that's there, there is not an active train coming through, but somebody I just talked to back there thought that maybe it was still used. It matters because of how far I need to go before I set up camp. If the first couple of campsites that were listed, I don't know how close they are to the road, but it might be too close for that. But having spent some nights on the Mississippi closer than I would prefer to train tracks, it's not really how I want to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning if I can avoid it. Actually, this isn't too bad. The background noise from the falls up here is kind of overwhelming the traffic noise. And Jen would approve. This is one of those campsites that is actually surprisingly difficult to maneuver around all the rocks and roots and everything, but I think I have something that works. I am a little close to the road, and there was just some guy with a dog wandering around there, but I think he went back down to the road, so it should be okay. So last night here on the Bartram is basically straight uphill for 4 or 5 miles, and then I hit the AT, and yeah. So I will have one more night tomorrow, but I think I'm going to go ahead and have the beans and rice and just enjoy this to the maximum. Home sweet home. But hey, it's not like everybody's worried and freaked out due to a combination of, like political chaos, technology bubble, things like that, which might all explode